been wanting to talk to you for a while, and I think now is the crucial time.
Cool. Yeah, let's do this.
So a lot's been going on with you personally, but also, in the country, there's a lot going on. I'm not sure where I should start exactly. Well, first off,
Well, how about this? It's funny because this is the first time we're speaking. I obviously knew who you were, but my perception of you was always like kind of like just the cool guy that everybody liked. Like I always saw videos of
oh,
you, out on the streets with people smiling, whatever. And so my perception of you was like, oh, this is kind of just a cool guy. And then when I posted that I was coming on your stream, I started getting, I guess, your haters or people that didn't like you. I didn't realize that you got put through the political meat grinder. I didn't realize that you had to go through a political meat grinder. So, I mean, that's kind of the theme of your show tonight is American politics imploding. It's like you can't even avoid it. You can't even avoid it.
yeah, it's impossible. I mean, I like to do regular content and cool guy content, I guess. And I'm around New York City all the time. I'm interacting with people. I do my show, the 1 Minute Podcast, do these vlogs. And I guess a lot of people do perceive me that way. But I mean, as well as I do that, how could you not talk about what's happening in this country and in the world? It's literally impossible to ignore. I didn't expect to ever go down the politics route. And yeah, so wait, I looked through the replies. Right before you jumped on, I was looking through the replies to your tweet, wondering like how your audience was going to receive it. What did you see?
Just people like, oh, why, or he's a punk, or like it was somehow a bad thing. And I mean, I'm like, I'll talk to anybody. I've always been of the mind that I'll talk to anybody. If they have a political disagreement, I might even be more willing to talk to them, actually, because usually that can be fun, especially for a political debate or a show or a live stream. But no, I didn't. I just didn't expect. I didn't expect people to have a negative reaction to that. But it's just everybody, and that's one thing that I've learned in the political media, where it's just like, if you do an interview with somebody, somebody's going to come after you a year, 2 years, 5 years later and say, oh my gosh, you interviewed this person. Look at what they said here. And it's like, I talked to a person. Like how am I supposed to know everything they're going to say for their entire life?
Yeah. And regardless, even if they say something you disagree with, I think people need to move on from this digital footprint cancel culture idea where it's like, okay, one time he said something I disagree with. And that's what I like so much about Charlie Kirk is that he would speak to people that he disagreed with. And it's time to just grow up a little bit and realize like everybody in politics right now, everybody with a voice, everybody has said something that will have people upset and angry. So to think that you can't communicate with them simply because of that fact is ridiculous and is against American values.
Well, it's like, it's like the public forum, the way people share their thoughts now. It used to be, I guess, you'd go to the local watering hole, the bar, and drink with your friends and talk shit. But now everybody just does it online. And so it's like, yeah, I'm sure there's things that you go out with your buddies with, maybe have a couple drinks or something and you say some stupid crap. That doesn't mean it's supposed to get, held against you for the rest of your life. But it's kind of like that's what the internet has turned into now, where people just spew their stupid garbage, their trash talk on the internet, and then it sticks forever. It's not in a little private square. It sticks forever.
Do you have a different perspective now, seeing what has transpired? Obviously, I'm sure you've seen, what has taken place in the legislation passed since then. But since the day of Charlie Kirk's assassination, have you reevaluated?
Are you talking about with that as the context?
Well, I think to go to bounce off your point, I have definitely reevaluated how I'm going to speak to different people and engage in conversation and debate. I have a similar show to Charlie's debate show called the 1 Minute Podcast, and it's like I probably shouldn't do this for a while. I haven't been strictly attacked before, but people have thrown water, and
Well, I'm sure you have to have security.
Yeah, I have a security guard, but how much could that really? If people want to charge up, or if they, if they're really insane, something could happen. It's definitely a security hazard, regardless.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you have reevaluated, or because you're in the same boat. You are also Charlie Kirk.
Well, I would say after this assassination, I did cancel public events. I did have some public speaking events that have been canceled or at least postponed. So I know there's a lot of other people in the political community that have taken similar action for obvious reasons. But before that happened, I had already kind of had that realization. I think I'd already been through that learning curve, and I kind of already made a decision that I wanted to start communicating differently, and that I kind of wanted to take my broadcast into a different direction. And so I kind of already had that realization that it's time to find a new way to communicate. And that doesn't mean it doesn't mean you're not being honest. It doesn't mean that you're, selling out. It doesn't mean that you're not going to tell the truth, or still cover the hardcore news as you always did. It's just the time is so delicate. Everything is so polarized now. Everything is so hyper sensationalized now. It really is. Nobody seems to be making the effort. And look, I get it from the right wing. I get why they're fed up. Believe me, I get it. I've been through it. So I get why they're fed up. And I kind of look the other way to it, the doxing and the getting people fired from their jobs. Like, I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to look the other way. I'm going to look the other way when they're doing it, because you know what? It goes both ways, and they didn't start it. But that's just kind of the world we're entering now. And when I got into the political world, I mean, I guess you could say I knew that what I was doing was going to be, to a certain level, a little dangerous, right? I mean, now, though, speaking your mind in politics, now people are just outright scared for their life.
Yeah.
It's not like a hey, okay, I'm kind of taking a risk here, and here's the risk factors, and here's what I might have to deal with. Now it's as you're saying, do I even want to go out and do a stream in public tonight, or am I ever going to come home if I do it?
Which I think now is an important time to show face in public more. I mean, the other day I was out in public. Today I was out. There's a SNEAKO, this Italian festival. I was out there all day today, shaking hands, talking to people. And it is a reminder, because I have been, the paranoia's risen. It's a reminder that most of it does exist online. Most people are good people.
Yeah.
Most people
that's true.
are normal humans going about their day. And there's less to be afraid of than what you will see online. Although things have definitely changed now. And even before this whole situation, which we'll get into, you recently had a major. I mean, it's impossible. I don't know how much you want me to talk about this with you, but it's almost impossible to ignore. You had a major separation from InfoWars and Alex Jones. Is that how has that affected your life, and what could you say about that?
I think I've already said everything.
Yeah.
I'm not, you can ask me questions and talk about it. I don't know how much juice I'm going to give you there. I think I've already said everything, and, I'll kind of just reiterate what I just said. I'd already kind of wanted to take my creative skills, my broadcast skills, whatever. I've been wanting to take them in a different direction. And again, I'm not trying to say anything negative here. This is what I've wanted to do for a while. And so, then Alex and I just kind of had a little mutual split, I would say, on the phone. And then, the rest after that is history. But no, I've kind of wanted to go a different direction for a while, and the timing is insane, obviously, but it's always kind of insane in politics, but it's, especially insane right now. So for me, it was just like total confirmation that, I made the right choice in deciding to go my own direction. And again, I'm not saying anything negative about anybody here. Just to reiterate, this is just where I'm coming from. But, when you're a network guy, like I'd been for almost 10 years, I mean, you're a network guy. You're a network guy. And I always put the network first and foremost. And, my show there was always first and foremost. So, I've been busy for a long time. SNEAKO. So I actually I'm feeling really stress-free, more than I have in a while. It's a real freeing feeling when you've been doing basically the same thing for almost 10 years. And I'm not usually a guy that does the same thing very long. So this is probably the longest I've done the same thing for quite a while. So I'm really excited about the future. The political world, when I start my broadcast back up October 6th, I go into a different world politically. I do enter a different world. But I think I'm going to be better prepared for that. I think I'm going to be more honed and a better communicator for that world when I get there. So I think the time off has served me well. I have nothing but great memories at InfoWars, even maybe the bad times. We'll call them good memories. And so, but I'm looking forward to the future, and I'm looking forward to being better in the new political world when I go back live every day.
And I wish you the best of success and everything. I think so many of us are rooting for you. We like to see what your, the Owen Shroyer solo podcast and in your own endeavors. I'm very excited to see where that's going to take you. And let's go to current events. So I saw you. I didn't get to watch your video yet, but you posted a 6-minute video called "People Aren't Believing the Official Narrative." And I think I'm in the same boat as you, and that's what why I was very interested in calling you today, is because I'm not believing the official narrative. I had a call with Dave Smith yesterday, and he said, I think he slowed down his rhetoric a little bit. I'm not sure if he went back and forth with you, but it was with Ian Carroll. Basically, I think at first he was calling people a crazy conspiracy kook if they didn't believe the official narrative. And during that call, it seemed like he was starting to see, because my point of view, I'm not sure what yours is. My point of view is that it's very likely, if we're going to find one nation who's capable of assassinating foreign officials and get into other countries' affairs, I think we know what country that is. So I'm wondering why you're not believing the official narrative.
Well, let's just go from the narrative itself. Let's just go from what we're getting from the government first. To me, it doesn't add up because there's too many missing links. Like, we know that there were probably, I mean, let's be conservative, 20 people filming that, maybe 50 cameras rolling when this thing happened. I mean, so the fact that we're getting a lot of weird, grainy footage is very strange. The campus, the Utah Valley campus, had just updated their security cameras, apparently. So that whole campus was basically security camera in the zone. There's probably very few spots on that campus, at least outside, I would say, where you didn't have at least 1 or 2 cameras on you. And somehow we get one weird angle of him coming off the roof. Well, where did he go? Where's the video footage of him going on the roof? Where's the video footage of him in different clothes? So obviously video footage is being hidden from the public. I don't think that's even a conspiracy theory. I think you can say that with pretty much complete confidence. What about the camera that was behind Charlie, which was an HD camera, I believe, that his team was using for an HD shot from behind that I'm sure they use like a panoramic view every time they do it? What about that camera? You think that camera would be pretty important, considering that would be the one in HD that would capture the actual shooter on the roof taking the shot. We haven't seen that. And then there's the whole weirdness about the gun being found in the woods. And I don't claim to be some expert when it comes to shooting. I go shooting for fun. That's it. I'm not some expert. I'm not going to pretend to be. But I talk to people that shoot and they're experts, and I talk to veterans that know their stuff, and they have questions that make sense to me. Like, well, where's the entry wound? Where's the exit wound? Where's the blood splattering from an exit wound? If it was the caliber of bullet that the official story claims it is, then there should have been probably a bigger hit than we saw there. And then I think too, just from watching it, it's kind of instinctual. Like, man, that looks like a professional hit, and that just looks like a professional shot. And from what we know, it doesn't sound like this guy was some master marksman. Now, again, some people say, oh, anybody can make that shot, and others say, no, that's a tough shot. Well, I say, here's a guy who took one shot and hit. That's what I saw, and it hit right where you would be a fatal shot. And I even maybe go farther. Now, this would be a little conspiratorial, but I would even go a little farther to say that maybe somebody wanted it to be right there, so it would sit there and spew blood like that. Now, that's a little conspiratorial. But again, I watched that, and it just screams professional hit. Now, okay, they're claiming this is some, I guess, left wing, I don't know, some guy that just decided he wanted to do this. Maybe he was involved in some of these new groups that we see coming up online that are kind of left wing LGBTQ types of peoples that I guess feel left out of the world, and so they're all kind of just stewing in their own little online zones. That's kind of where they want us to go. Now, I find it strange that just 2 weeks ago, the very same FBI that is telling you that this shooter was tied into the trans community, the very same FBI just 2 weeks ago at the school shooting was trying to cover up that it was a trans community individual. They tried to cover it up. Now they want us. Now they want to go with that as the official narrative. So again, I'm kind of looking at all these patterns, and I'm just saying it just doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. The official narrative doesn't add up. And for an event this big, I also think it's hard. And again, I don't know if this is something that is legitimately coming from your subconscious, or it's just because the world is so crazy, you can't take anything at face value. I kind of struggle with these things sometimes. But you just think, Charlie Kirk, that's a big name. This is a guy who would be eligible to run for president in the next election. This is a guy who's really, you could argue, the most impactful on college campuses when it comes to conservative politics. So it's not a minor figure that some guy might just have a beef with. He did have private security. He knew that his life was in danger. It appears now from some of the clips that we've seen gone viral and some of the conversations he was having behind the scenes. So I think that all of those things combined just tells me, no, I don't buy the official narrative at all. I don't buy the official story at all. Now, I'm not saying that there might be real stuff in it. There might be some real stuff that they have, but it's not enough to convince me of the official narrative. And so then as far as the other angle that everybody talks about, the number one angle is the Israel angle. I look at it like this. Originally, that wouldn't have even have come to my mind. I mean, originally, that wasn't even a thought in my mind. I was like, this is the same left-wing terror that we've seen from the same people that we've seen. It's the same pattern, really, that's been going on for years. You can go back to when James Hodgkinson tried to shoot up, do a mass murder at a Republican baseball practice. The mainstream media buried that story. So this has been going on for a long time. So it didn't even come to my head. And then what do we see online? We see all the same pro-Israel voices. We see all the same voices that are Israel loyalists. And it's Israel didn't do it. Israel didn't do it. And it's Netanyahu coming out. So it's like, if I'm sitting in a crime scene and I've got somebody running around, I didn't do it. 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 And everyone's like, oh. So eventually I'm going to say, hey, come over here for a second. Why don't you just sit down? Why don't you just have a seat? So that's what it's looked like to me. Again, it was not even a thought in my head when this thing happened, but then it's like the constant defense. And so then you get a little curious and you find out, okay, well, Netanyahu reported it first. The Jerusalem Post reported it first. You hear about this meeting that Charlie Kirk had with, I guess, some big Israel donors that kind of went a little sideways. You saw kind of Charlie even himself start to look at the whole Israel situation a little differently. And I think that's because he's a good person. And, eventually what's going on in the Gaza Strip, you just have to, you can't support it. I'm of the mindset of I don't want anything to do with any of it. Okay. These people have been killing each other for thousands of years. I'm like, I want nothing to do with any of it. Don't put a flag on me. Okay. Don't put a name on me. Don't put a slogan on me. I'm an American. I have nothing to do with this crap. I want nothing to do with any of it. Yep. And so that's where I come from. But you see all of this developing and it's like, okay, well, gee. And then what do we remember? We remember Netanyahu bragging about the pagers. We remember Mossad bragging about how they can get hundreds of intelligent agents and assets penetrating top-level governments and intelligence agencies. They're basically bragging about how they can do whatever the hell they want. So then it's like all of this circumstantial evidence starts building, and all of a sudden, okay, here we are talking about Israel again. So, if I'm a gambling man, I don't even know what I would bet on at this point. I would probably bet that it was a left-wing terror attack. If I had to place a bet, I'd say the odds are on that. I'd say it's close, but I'd still say the odds are on that. But I laid this out earlier, and I want to get the exact. I have a list of 4 things that I'm convinced of at this moment.
Okay.
There's 4 things that I'm convinced of, and I'd be curious to see if you agree.
Let's see.
But the 4 things I'm convinced of as of this moment is 1, he was shot directly in the neck. I get a little pushback on that, but I believe that.
I think so.
2, there was some level of prior knowledge. There's enough activity online to suggest that there was some prior knowledge that this was going to happen or something was going to happen. 3, the official story doesn't add up. Too many key elements missing. We covered that. And then 4, trust in government is so low that even if they were telling us the truth, nobody would believe it. And I think that maybe at the end of the day, that's probably where we end up if we're not there already. And how can you blame anybody? They lie to us about everything. They lie to us about the major events in our country's history, almost every single one. And we now know it. We're more informed and educated on these things than ever. And so they can't do it in real time on us anymore. It's just not going to go down like that.
That's very fair, especially Charlie Kirk said that Epstein worked for Israel, which you're not supposed to say. If you look at the Trump administration, they say Trump said himself, if you still want to see the Epstein files released, I don't want you in my support base. So I'm like, okay, fuck you. If you're going to say fuck you, that's it. That was not mentioned by Netanyahu when he talks about how much of a promoter of Judeo-Christian values he was, how much of a friend of Israel he was. Charlie Kirk said Israel was sexually blackmailing American politicians to get their undying allegiance to them. That is a major, major allegation. That was crazy conspiracy theory 5 years ago. Also, when we bring up the patsy that was there at first, remember when everyone thought it was this old guy who was there saying, arrest me, kill me. Many sources,
that's unreal.
They're saying that this was an Ashkenazi Jew, but this is the state of Utah when there's only like 10 Jews in the whole. Like, so that's strange.
So here's a means to go back to a theme from earlier. This is one of those times where for me, I'm going to communicate this differently, and I'm going to say, I don't care if he's Jewish. It doesn't matter to me. I'm going to say, why does this individual seem to be at all these major events in U.S. history? How does he always seem to be on camera at all these major events, right? So I know people want to do the whole Jewish angle and fine, whatever. You get free speech. But I do think at a certain degree you are turning people off when you do that, because they do buy into the anti-Semitism thing, and they do buy into this idea that somehow if you're not pro-Israel, you're an anti-Semite. So you have to accept that that's the world that you live in, and you can still go, full guns a-blazing on the issue, but I think you're going to turn a lot of people off, and you're not going to be able to communicate what you need to communicate. That is a very important anomaly, that this guy was somehow there distracting law enforcement at this event. He seems to get on camera at all these major events. And I think somebody came out and said, oh, we didn't arrest anybody, as far as the investigation is concerned, but that guy actually was arrested for disrupting law enforcement. He actually did get arrested for obstruction. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, why did they just forget about that? Doesn't seem like an insignificant thing.
And he did a great job disrupting. He must have distracted so many officers that were on scene and so many of the first responders. And I think one of the most, what we can look at the most, because all this is speculation. Obviously, I think you're on the same page as me. We have no strict evidence that it was Israel or that it was intelligence or anything. We can't rightfully say that. But what we can look at is what has happened, what has transpired in the past 4 days. Just today, the State of Israel on Instagram posted that they are proposing a new idea called the 50 States One Israel Project, where they want to bring. So you've seen this. I was surprised.
Oh yeah, and I saw. Well, and Congress voted on not blocking the Epstein. Congress blocked the Epstein files again. Congress voted on the you can't boycott Israel bill. Mm-hmm. All of this happened after the assassination. Those two things happened, and then they flew to Israel for the event you're talking about.
Marco Rubio was there kissing the wall yesterday next to Mike Huckabee. He's again talking about the hostages. There's been a lot of $650 million in military aid just went to Israel as well. Yep. This is all in the past 4 days since Charlie Kirk's assassination.
Unfortunately, that's actually par for the course. So that's not really out of the norm, unfortunately.
But with that coinciding, Netanyahu going really heavy, and I'm glad you pointed it out, was one of the first people to tweet his condolences with the Jerusalem Post as well. And also, for anyone calling me or anyone questioning this a crazy conspiracy kook, then Netanyahu is equally a crazy conspiracy kook. He went on Fox News the next day and indirectly/directly blamed this on radical Islamists, on Marxists.
Yeah. And you saw a lot of that. You did see a lot of that.
So if he can immediately blame it on Marxists working with radical Islamists, then me questioning who's doing this and what country's behind it is equally as kooky, because this is the narrative that they use to justify going into war in the Middle East after 9/11. Netanyahu was the same guy who went in front of Congress and said they have weapons of mass destruction. We went there, we went to war, we found out they had none of them. So the war was based off of a lie, a pretense that Netanyahu came to America with. When he does that again and says that it was radical Islamists, it's time for us to take a step back and you're not gonna lie to us twice. And if I'm crazy, so is he.
Well, I think a lot of people feel that way. I think a lot of people now feel that America was duped into these wars in the Middle East. I don't know how many Americans are whether to accept that they were lied to about September 11th or not. And maybe that's the next big thing. Not going to happen this year. We were distracted with another major event, obviously. But, once you kind of go through that process, that window, that thought pattern that you just went through, I think is inevitable for people that can do critical thinking. That linear timeline of events. It's like, oh yeah, okay, we were lied to about September 11th, spent $21 trillion in Middle East wars. We were lied to about the weapons of mass destruction. Tens of thousands of Americans died. Even more came back wounded and messed up. And it's like, okay, yeah, we definitely don't want to do that again. But now it's like, it really does go both ways. You have some people that blame the Jews for everything, and then you have some people that blame Muslims for everything. And so it's just like this crazy world. And then you just realize this is all propaganda. And that's why I always just step back. And ultimately, this is where America has to go, in my opinion. And I think it's inevitable as where the populist movement goes from here. Because I don't know, MAGA is, yeah, I mean, whatever. I've been kicked out. Trump said I'm out because, you know, I want the Epstein files. So whatever. MAGA is this other thing over here. But the populist movement isn't going anywhere. The populist movement is only getting bigger. And so I think that most people are having these realizations. And when they see it happening again and again and again, it's like, wait a second. Why are our country is in, we have problems. In case you didn't notice, I think you kind of probably noticed. You go downtown, it's not so good. There's a lot of homeless people, deranged people, drug addicts, and violence. In fact, there's places you can't even go. It's so bad. There's places cops won't even go. Mm-hmm. Cops won't even go. We got our own problems. And it's like every time we turn our head, there's our politicians back in Israel. And then they come back here, and then they got another check from AIPAC. And then you log online, and it's 10,000s of these accounts spamming about how great Israel is. You're just like, good Lord, I'm an American. Why do I keep hearing about this stuff? So I think people are sick of it. And then this is where they kind of reach the higher geopolitical conclusion that, oh, all the enemies that I'm told I have are actually Israel's enemies. Boy, that's interesting.
In the populist movement, I'm glad you brought that up. That's very clear that they're, I think, afraid of where it's going to go because they're losing a lot of the core Trump support base. Today was a good example where J.D. Vance substituted Charlie Kirk's show with Tucker Carlson and talking about the assassination and about recent events. And I think the fact that they're speaking so much about Israel's involvement, and they even did speak on that show about Charlie Kirk's opinion of Israel, it shows that they're willing to speak about the subject much more than before because they're aware that the populist movement cares more than they ever have. What were your thoughts on that J.D. Vance, Tucker Carlson conversation today?
Well, I'll tell you what, aside from what they said, let's look at what this represents. Apparently, and this is from multiple people reporting this, apparently Tucker Carlson was a subject of discussion with Charlie Kirk because he was platforming Tucker Carlson at his events, as well as Dave Smith and others. So I think from what we can read from some of these reports, it seems that there was a lot of pressure for Charlie not to do that. And I don't think anybody can deny that at this point. And actually, and this is kind of more of a hidden gem that was discovered on X. I reposted on my X. On September 7th, Ben Shapiro was on Mark Levin's Sunday night Fox show. And you wouldn't have thought much of this at the time, but now it all of a sudden hits a lot differently. And Mark and Ben were talking about some event. They were talking about some event where their supposed conservative friends had become anti-Israel Islama Marxist. And so you hear that at the time, you're like, okay, this is just Levin yapping. This is just that loudmouth yapping, and Shapiro just up there, doing whatever his role is. Okay, whatever. Well, now you hear that, and it actually confirms it. Well, it seems to. Let's be fair. It seems to confirm. The context seems to confirm that Shapiro and Levin, or actually maybe more Levin, I don't know how much Shapiro knew about this, but Levin, who is in the Trump administration, by the way, and it goes to Israel almost every month or week even, Levin seems to imply that there was a meeting where people in the big money conservative movement were having questions about Israel, and behind closed doors, some people weren't too happy about it. Now, again, you hear that on September 7th from Levin and Shapiro, you don't think much about it. You hear that on September 12th, and against now what Candace Owens is reporting and what Gray Zoom News is reporting, and now all of a sudden you're like, that lines up. Now it all lines up. Now, again, does that confirm anything? No, this is all circumstantial evidence. But okay, you leave the Charlie Kirk assassination out of the equation now, and you realize something inevitable, which actually Charlie has said before. I've heard it on at least one clip. And, it's kind of a generational thing, but younger conservatives are done with Israel. They're done. They have no interest in it. And, some of them you can buy off. Okay. Some of them you can buy off, and you can send them on the fancy trips, and you can bring them to Israel and clink the glasses and tell them they can get the donor money. And some will take that. Some will. And you know what? I'm out of the game of judging people. I'm out of the game of blaming anybody for anything. Okay. Do what you got to do. and the world will decide. And ultimately, you can answer to God, as far as I'm concerned. I'm just going to tell the truth and try to stay as honest and, keep my integrity as possible. So yeah, I got offered that trip. I turned it down. And then I warned others that this was about to happen. So younger conservatives aren't interested. We have our own problems. I used to think that the Israel issue was maybe 2 or 3 or 4 election cycles away from really becoming the top issue. I think we're now probably either 1 or 2. I think it's either maybe this midterms even, or definitely the presidential election. And I know that did you actually do a video with Mom Dami, or I think you just did a celebration video? I don't know if you actually met him.
No, I never met him. I got kicked out of a couple of his events because the ADL it would be a major headache if I were to ever appear publicly. So his staff members were quick to escort me out without.
Well, that's stupid of them.
Yeah, well,
that's dumb of them because you were complimentary of him. You were actually.
I mean, there's so many things
you
I
were
disagree
supportive.
with. I'm supportive because he's the only one. That's like the most important issue to me. Obviously, so many other things.
And that's where you and I would probably differ. But I don't live in New York, so it doesn't. I'm not going to be voting in that election.
No, I didn't vote either.
I
didn't vote for him, but I complimented him and I congratulated him for winning because he had the balls to be on that stage and say, actually, I'm going to stay in New York City, which is, whatever you say about him, that is the most patriotic America First position, to be like, actually, I'm not going to go fly and kiss the wall and get spit on like Brandon Tatum. I'm going to stay right here and put New York first, which I love to see. But I mean, obviously abolishing the police stuff and there's a lot that needs work on his campaign, and I hope he goes in the right direction.
But you know what? I get it. I do get it. I would never vote for him, and I'd say good luck to New York City when he gets in, and I do anticipate he will. But I said that night because I was always getting a lot of pushback. And again, what I've learned too is that people just take political reporting as opinion now. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm telling you, there is a referendum in the midterms and it will be Israel. I'm telling you, and the Mamdani election is going to be the first test. And they thought he has no chance. He'll never do it, And I'm like, you don't get it. You don't understand how impactful this Israel issue is right now. You really underestimate it. And then he won. And I think now I think the people that were kind of sleepwalking, or now the people that were just so confident that this gravy train was going to continue, the military-industrial complex, the foreign aid, the U.S.-Israel alliance, they were just so confident because it's never been checked in a very big way that result was shocking to them, and now it's hitting them like a tsunami, and they just don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. So aside from the Kirk assassination and any involvement people suspect there's no doubt the Israel issue is going to be the number one issue probably by the 2028 presidential elections. And you're going to have to be on we're done supporting Israel's side, I think, to win.
What about cancellation and censorship? I'm sure you've seen the discourse is getting pretty violent. Well, I wouldn't say violent, but pretty angry on the far left and the far right, calling for censorship of people advocating for violence or for support or for celebration of death. Where does this fit into the core fabrics of free speech in this country?
Well, when the left did it, the right wing obviously had a problem with it. And so a lot of people are calling them hypocrites for now engaging in the same behavior, which I'd say is fair. I'd say it's fair commentary. But I'm not going to engage in that commentary. I'm going to look the other way, and I'm going to say, hey, you know what? You flicked this guy in the ear you flicked the horse in the ear one too many times. He's going to kick back. So good luck. You kind of did this to yourself. So I'm not going to get involved in any of that, but I'm also going to say, you know what? Let them have their cake. Okay. Let them have their cake. I think it really represents the division that we have in this country. I think it represents the hyperpolarization. I think it represents just how far the left and the right are from one another now. The crevasse seems to be widening here, and nobody seems to be interested in trying to bring it back. And I don't know, maybe it can't get back. So I think the right is now realizing that there's a war against them, and the people that are waging this war are willing to kill you. And so I think the right wing has kind of finally had to come to grips with that. Now, ultimately, you want to talk about what is really going to change this country? Because I don't think any of this is going to change anything. Like people saying the right wing is more unified than ever. It's really not. It's really not. It's actually more divided than ever. You have the establishment right, and then you have the new right, and you have the establishment right which will never let the new right in because they refuse to stop talking about Israel. Again, just go listen to the Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro clip. Shapiro basically says it. If you're anti-Israel, we don't want you in the Republican Party. He basically says that. So that's the establishment right trying to keep the new right out. But I think that they've just realized that, yeah, if you don't start standing up for yourself, you're not going to have anything. You're not going to have anything left. There's not going to be. But ultimately, what's going to really change the country when it's so bad, SNEAKO, when it's so bad that the average person just doesn't even know how they're going to get by anymore. Because, you know, you want to talk about crime in the inner cities, and there's all kind of different things that we can talk about, and statistics and demographics and fathers and, you know, all the stuff that gets thrown into that conversation. But, you know, the one important aspect that gets conveniently left out, but is also very important, is poverty. When you live in poverty, you're a desperate person. And when you're basically into such a state of poverty that you have to commit a crime to survive, well, what do you think you're going to do? You're going to commit a crime. And so the worse the economy gets, the more we see other foreign issues and foreign entanglements and everything else get put ahead of our issues, and we can't even fix a damn pothole, and our taxes keep going up, and the cost of living keeps going up. Once you cross that where life is too hard for people, that's when you'll really get some change. That's when people will really rise up. And I'm not calling for violence. I'm not a violent person. I'm just talking about when it comes to what's really going to save this country, what's really going to change this country. It's clear to me now that they're never going to let somebody get elected that's going to do it. I don't know if we can ever have enough people in Congress to stop the corruption. You know, I think we've kind of gone through that process as good as we can in the last, let's say, 8 years. And we've learned that it's just like, geez, no matter who we get in there, nothing really changes. So there's going to have to be some form of an internal unification factor, and then a mass revolt. So maybe we decide we're going to stop paying taxes. I don't know. Something like that, hopefully, would be the easy way to go about it. Maybe state governments wake up and say, we have to separate from the Fed. We just have to completely separate from the Fed. We are now independent from the Fed. That might be another way to do it. But to me, I just see us going down this same path. I don't really see anything changing. I think things are actually still going to get worse, unfortunately.
I agree. It seems almost inevitable. I mean, we can do as much as we can to try to speak about this, but the writing is on the wall. It's very clear where this is going. I mean, hopefully not. And I see that discussion from the right wing on X and, you know, from podcast space. They talk about the crime in the city so much. New York, for example, has been very safe recently. I was born here. I moved back at the end of last year. It's been almost a year back. 2 years after COVID, I moved to Florida because of the COVID restrictions, but the violent crime has not been bad. Like, especially in Manhattan, has been relatively safe. I think people are surprised when they see videos of people dining outside. The major, from my anecdotal evidence, the major problem here is the wealth gap. Is the wealth disparity, the amount of people that are not able to buy homes anymore. Like the amount of debt, the average debt in Gen Z is something like $94,000. If you see, just like, if you walk around here, I don't know the last time you've been to New York, the amount of single, beautiful women walking around is literally like astonishing. It's like you obviously it's nice to be around, but then you start thinking, how is it possible that there are this many women in their 20s and 30s that are not in a relationship? It seems like you're in the Big Short.
Because dudes are broke?
Because not only dudes are broke, but that's a major part. Most of these attractive women, and they're everywhere, are dating the same 10% of guys. And so they're getting...
So that hasn't changed. I haven't been to New York in like 4 or 5 years, but I'm glad to know that hasn't changed.
It's more than what I've seen in other movies or what my previous generations tell me. The last time you came was what year?
I'd say probably 2020, maybe before the lockdowns, I think.
2020, but yeah, so there's no way it was like this in the 80s and 90s, where every girl thought that they needed to, to uphold their lifestyle, they need to be with the upper echelon guy. The average guy who's grinding and working hard literally can't afford to be with her. And this city is so expensive. If you're making 6 figures living in Manhattan, you're lower middle class. So the writing here is like,
well, and this is another issue. What I see Republican leadership swinging and missing on like every single time. It's like, imagine a baseball player, every time he gets up there against a pitcher, he strikes out. every single time the Republicans strike out on the Israel issue, and every single time they strike out on the economy issue. Now, to Trump's credit, in his first term, he did great on the economy. He had great success on the economy. They killed it with COVID. I don't know if we'll ever recover. That was permanent damage. What they did to us with COVID, permanent damage. What they did to us with the Biden border invasion, permanent damage. These are the American people need to understand that those were permanent blows. Those were destructive, permanent blows to this country that we'll never recover from. We'll be lucky if we're left with a scar. It looks more like we've amputated part of our republic in these two horrific policies and agendas. So now when the Republicans and when Trump talk about how great the economy is and all this stuff, people don't believe that. It's just not true. That's not the average American's experience right now. The average American's experience is living paycheck to paycheck. That's the average American's experience. You're not going to sell them that the economy's good. No. And then you try to sell them how we have to support Israel all the time. Well, they can barely support their family. So they're not going to really take kindly to hearing about how we need to support a foreign country as well. And then on top of that, when that country is at war with seven countries that they've attacked, I think in the last month, now you're really starting to tick people off.
Including our ally, which they just completely swept under the rug and moved on. That was, the news cycle is going so fast now. I didn't even get to ask you about Irina, the Ukrainian girl on that bus in Carolina. What are the ramifications of that? The day before Charlie Kirk, this was looking like it was possibly the George Floyd for white people, but the news cycle moved on quicker than I've ever seen for such a brutal attack. How does where do we go from here?
I think the news cycle was forced to move on. I think that story did get a lot of attention, though. All things considered, I do think it got a lot of attention. You know, what's so strange now is because we all hear it on the video where he says, "I got that white girl." I think that's exactly what he said, is "I got that white girl." Okay, so you hear that and you're like, all right. I mean, I'm basically left to believe two things, and neither one of them is good, by the way. But I'm basically left to believe that he killed a girl because she was white. That's it. Simple as that. Or this guy is so deranged out of his mind that he just does something and then is like, "Oh, I got a white girl." It wasn't like he was processing it until afterwards or something. So you either have these psychotic killers that ride on the train with you, which is nice, or you have people on the New York City subway that want to stab you if you're white, which I guess is pretty nice too.
It was in Carolina, not New York City. But
that's right. Yeah. The Carolina, Charlotte, right?
Charlotte, but also the Daniel Penny situation was in New York, so I guess you could equate the two. Similar situation.
Yeah, which see, and that's what they do. They prosecute Daniel Penny so that Irana gets stabbed.
Yeah, people are afraid. Yeah, white people are not going to go stick up when they see what happened to Daniel Penny. He had to go and spend all his lawyer fees.
Or anybody. Nobody stood up in that video.
Yeah. But it's funny. I've spoken to a lot of BLM, black activist types. A lot of them are saying, well, not all of them, but I'll say the majority said that "I got that white girl" is not direct evidence that it was a hate crime. Is that saying that? But imagine if Derek Chauvin, while he's arresting George Floyd, says, "I got that black man. I got that." Everyone is unanimously saying that that's a hate crime. Lock him up forever. When it's a black guy, we gotta figure out how.
Yeah, he's like, "Hey man, I don't want to hurt you. Can you just stop?" Like, "Hey man, I really don't want to put my knee on your head. Can you just get in the car?" Like, no, okay.
And that's unanimously decided a hate crime. But on the other side, well, maybe he was crazy. Maybe he was sad that day. Maybe he was schizophrenic. The double standard has never been more clear. And, it is more evidence that it's going in a populist direction. Would you ever run for office, Owen?
No, I get this question all the time. I just say no at this point. I love life too much. I enjoy life too much. It seems like a torturous experience. Part of me says, like, there's part of me that likes to learn and grow says, "Hey, go do it and just do it for one session, just to see. Just go do it for one session, just to see what it's like, learn some behind the scenes stuff, and then get the hell out." Right? Just go do it for the learning experience. And I don't know, maybe I can have a vote that affects something if I got in the House, but if I did it, it'd be just probably as a learning experience. And then, you take the podium, you get your hot clips like everybody loves to do now. And then you try to have a good voting record. I'm not sure how many care about that anymore. But no, I love life too much. It's too risky. I never viewed myself as a politician. I still don't. So I have people that ask me that. I have some people in politics that have, asked me if, hey, this seat over here is pure red area, but no, I'd say no.
So what are your motivations? And I think this is a two-part question. What really red pilled you on this subject, on the Israel subject? So like, what's your main goal with your upcoming show? And also what led you down this direction? Because you're not supposed to know what you know.
Well, I tend to do what I'm not supposed to do. So maybe that's just it. Maybe that's the simple answer. No, I think, if I give kind of if you have a longer term understanding, and I think that what I go through politically actually reflects in many ways the average American, or you might even say the normie that just gets politically informed. I was probably net positive on Israel for the entire first Trump administration. I wasn't really big into Israel, didn't really cover it, didn't really care, was never really on my radar. The only time it would ever pop up is when people would spam you. You're covering for Israel. You are an Israel shill, because I wouldn't really talk about it. And I was just like, okay, whatever. So I was probably net positive Israel, net positive Netanyahu. He said good things about Trump. He said good things about America. So I was like, oh, okay, Netanyahu, whatever. Doesn't seem like a bad guy, whatever. Then he was the first foreign leader, I believe, to congratulate Joe Biden on his stolen election, which we all knew was stolen. And Netanyahu, who was supposedly a Trump ally, supposedly a Trump friend, right? Netanyahu, he's always Trump. He's always MAGA.
Yeah.
And then he gives Biden the first congratulations after a clearly stolen election.
Which I got banned on YouTube for. You were wondering like how I got into this political space. I said the obvious, that the election was rigged. That was one of my YouTube strikes, along with vaccine misinformation for not getting vaccinated for COVID.
There you go. Yeah. So it's a double crime for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was the first time that kind of led me to pause, and I was just like, that's a backstabber. That's a backstabber move. And so that, to me, you do that once, and now I question you forever. But I still wasn't really too into the subject. I just probably went from net positive to net neutral, maybe net negative. And then I would say October 7th happened, and, to me, that's when everything changed, because it was an obvious stand down from day one. It was obviously a stand down. And so then in the immediate aftermath, you saw how it was engulfing our nation politically. And now I see foreign flags on the streets. I see Palestinian flags. I see Israel flags. I'm pissed off. I'm an American. I don't want to see any of it. And now all of a sudden I have this holy war, this thousands of years old, this holy war in the Middle East is now in my backyard. It's now in my kitchen. And so now I'm really pissed off. And then what do you see? And then you see that this has been going on forever. Israel getting hundreds of billions of dollars. Israel getting nonstop military support. I mean, just any time. Netanyahu coming to Congress for 4 decades telling us to go to war in the Middle East, giving us bad intel every single time Americans go die. Not a single Israeli was in Operation Iraqi Freedom. Not a single one. Not a single one. And so, now all of a sudden you're looking into this stuff. And then what's going on in the Gaza Strip, and now Israel's striking 7 different countries, and now Israel's getting us to bomb Iran and save their ass again. So yeah, I'm sick of it. I want a divorce. I want to completely decouple from the Middle East. I want a divorce with Israel, and I think they kind of sense it's coming, don't they? I think they kind of sense it's coming, and so right now they're kind of like the gilded lover. It's like all the stars are aligning. I'm about to dump your ass, and so they're flailing. They're throwing pots at us. They're throwing the iron at us. They're trying to stab us with the sharpest knife in the kitchen. And so that's where it feels like we're at right now. Now, as far as what I want to do, I got great advice when I was younger, entering media, from a big mentor of mine, and he said to find a void and fill it. Well, I'm a consumer of political media. I'm a massive consumer, and what I've learned is that the well is dry. The well is dry, SNEAKO. And I don't mean this as an insult to you, but you didn't start streaming to get involved in politics.
No.
And now here you are people are looking at you as a voice for politics, right? And so I think that tells you where the news media really is. So I want to fill the void. Nobody covers news anymore. I don't know where to go to even get news. Like, I mean, X is a great source, but it's like I have to sit here and parse through all of this stuff to try to find news. And so I come from traditional broadcast background. I come from more of a traditional talk radio news background, and that's what I want to do. So my 3-hour show is going to be news. I mean, I can't hide who I am. I can't hide my politics, right? That's not going to hide, and I'm still going to tell the truth. I'm not going to avoid any stories. But my 3-hour show is going to be news. I'm not going to do sensationalizing stuff. I'm not going to do clickbait stuff. I'm not going to do the drama stuff. I'm not going to do all this other gimmicky stuff. It seems like everything's a gimmick. Everything's a gimmick. Everything's a niche. Everything's a who's the highest bidder. What propaganda do I want to push? And it's hard to find anybody that's completely void of all of that. And so that's the void that I want to fill. I want to just read the people news. If you want news 3 hours a day from somebody that's honest, that you can trust, that's what I want to be for the people. And that's what I'm going to start doing October 6th.
And I mean, your ex is a great source of that. I mean, I just nonstop every day I see you pop up. Your page was how I saw that YouTube took down the video of Charlie Kirk questioning whether Israel issued a stand down on October 7th. So what?
Yeah, Patrick bet David.
Yeah, on the PBD podcast, that was several months ago, and I think, or maybe even last year. Do you believe that Israel issued a stand down on October 7th? Did they have prior knowledge?
Yeah, I don't see how it's possible. First of all, I think instinctually, Israel, I mean, the #1 spy state in the world, the #1 security state in the world, the Golden Dome, the pressure sensitive, the heat sensitive borders, and they couldn't stop people on ATVs and parachutes. I mean, come on. So that's just like, to me, just like looking at it, it was obvious. And then when you hear from top intelligence and security experts like General Flynn, who says, hey, I've been to that area. I know that area. I know the security apparatus, and there's 0% chance there wasn't a warning. 0% chance. And I think, to put it all in perspective, because Americans, we have a very vast country, right? You're in New York right now, right? I'm in Austin. We're so far apart, right? It's like a 4-hour flight for me and you.
We're continent. I mean, we're Europe away.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the Middle East, specifically Israel and Gaza, these babies are right in the same neighborhood, man. I mean, they're just right there an hour away. Gaza is only 45 minutes from Tel Aviv. These countries are not very far from each other. So you're telling me that this attack was able to go on for 7 hours and there was no response from the IDF? None? Sorry, don't buy it.
So what motive would Israel have to assess? So if they knew about October 7th, which obviously we could figure out why, it's because they wanted a justification to go and ethnically cleanse Gaza and expand the greater state of Israel. It makes sense. Why would Israel want to assassinate Charlie Kirk if they did?
Well, yeah. Okay. So let's just, this is a purely hypothetical thing.
Correct.
So we're getting into hypotheticals here. But I would ask this question. Did Charlie Kirk tell anybody he wanted to run for president? And who did he tell? Did Charlie Kirk tell anybody he wanted to run for president? And who did he tell, if so? And then I think the other thing would have to be, I'm not going to say that I know all the inner workings of how political funding and everything works, because at InfoWars, we really are completely separate from that. So I may have had my own professional differences with Alex, but it's totally independent. Okay. It is truly totally independent. We don't have to grovel to donors. And I've never had to deal with that. Now I know people that have, and I've seen a little bit of it firsthand. So I can say maybe enough to kind of understand, but I don't understand the real weight of whatever TPUSA was up to, as far as Charlie obviously was getting tens of millions of dollars, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, so this is big money stuff. This is big political money stuff. And I think Charlie, I think he's probably a really good guy, and maybe when he kind of got involved in it, perhaps, he's really young, maybe a little naive even. And he didn't realize, once you get into bed with some of these political people, some of these geopolitical people, that's supposed to be a permanent relationship, and that's how they see it. So, if you do the mafia dirty when you're supposed to be doing business together, what do they say? You're sleeping with the fishes. You're going to get a dead horse head in your bed. So, hypothetically speaking, I would say that would be why. But again, I think it's mostly just circumstantial. I think most people are looking that direction, mostly just because of the current circumstances that we already covered.
What about Judeo-Christian values? That's the common rhetoric. You're a Christian.
I never want to hear that word. Every time I hear that word, I feel like an angel faints. I'm so sick of it. What a made up concept, a bullshit concept. the epitome of hyperbole, total propaganda.
Okay, so are you a Catholic, a Protestant? What type of Christian?
I was raised Catholic. I'm a Christian today. I'm not going to claim I'm a religious zealot.
Okay.
I respect my upbringing. I respect my family that raised me Christian, and I respect that doctrine. But I would say I am a big believer in God, big believer in creation. So, people want to have a big religious debate. I don't really want to get into that. I'm not going to sit here and have a religious debate with you. God is real. Creation is real. And to me, that's really where it all starts, and that's where it all begins. And, all the different religions, maybe they're good, maybe they're bad. If they teach you to do good stuff, then I'd say they're good. If not, well, then maybe we got a problem. But I came from a Catholic Christian family, but I'm a believer in God. I'm a believer in creation. And that I feel is not up for debate.
I completely agree 100% with everything you just said. And well, what about Ted Cruz? He said on Tucker Carlson's show that God will bless those who bless the state of Israel. Doesn't that mean we should give him
just more religious propaganda? Just more religious propaganda, more twisting the words of the Bible to get you to support a foreign nation. That's all it is.
And are you optimistic? I mean, earlier you mentioned that you could see where this is going. What are Owen Shroyer's predictions for the future of America?
All right, final comment here. Final comment. Let's get real heavy then.
Yeah.
This administration has basically, I think, sold us out to big tech, which is basically operating with the Israeli spy state. And so that's where I see it going. The military-industrial complex is kind of, I think, a thing of the past. Now, it's still going to exist with like drone wars, and they'll try to keep a bunch of proxy wars going. But war is getting less and less necessary, and it's getting less and less popular politically. So I think the military-industrial complex is going to kind of turn into the security technological industrial complex with drones and AI surveillance all the time. The pharmaceutical industrial complex is still fighting for survival. I think ultimately that gets defeated as well. But ultimately, after these 4 years, I think that's what we're going to be on. I think we're going to be walking through the old generational political graveyard of what used to be the military industrial complex, the pharmaceutical industrial complex, maybe even the foreign lobby complex, maybe if we're lucky. But when we get to the next election cycle, we're going to be into the AI Skynet, Terminator phase. And I don't know what happens after that. I don't think anybody knows. We can only, we can take what we've seen in the sci-fi movies, or maybe it could be good. But then I think in 2028, I think that's when the new generational right and the new generational left will finally have their day politically. I think it's going to be the 2028 presidential election. The new generational left, they have had 3 straight election cycles stolen from them. It should have been Bernie Sanders for 3 straight presidential election cycles, but the Democrats just steal they steal it, so he could never get through.
Completely agree.
So the new generational left got rejected. But after Mamdani wins, I think the Democrats are going to embrace it and say, okay, this is our path forward to victory now. The old left is dead, right? The old left, the old Democrats, Pelosi, the Biden type, they're done. Nobody wants them anymore. So I think the Democrats embrace the new generational left. I think it's going to be a struggle session on the right, but ultimately I think 2028, the new generational right wins as well. And issues like foreign wars, foreign entanglements, which are, conservative values are not getting involved in foreign entanglements. So they've kind of twisted that into a conservative value. I think that changes in 2028. And then I think we can maybe start the process of taking our country back. We'll see what Trump wants to do. He's going to be in charge of his own legacy. I don't know. I'm not too confident about what he's going to leave us with in 4 years, but he's still got time to do it. He's still in the first quarter. So let's see a great comeback here potentially. But that's where I see things going.
That's a great final comment. I guess maybe next time I'll ask you about Palantir, about Peter Thiel, more a little about Trump and Epstein. But I think that was a great point to leave it on, man. Owen Shroyer, thanks so much for coming on.
All right, man.
We wish you all the success.
Glad to be here. Let's do it again.
All right. Have a great rest of your night. Thanks for coming on, and God bless.
You too. Peace and love.